Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of the Hardscape Growth Show, because today we are joined by the team that helped build the 2022 Hardscaper Showcase Case Study Project. So we're going to be talking about what that means, what that project looked like, what are some of the challenges that we faced, and what are the lessons that we learned in working in a tight urban space with very tight access, trying to build something using techniques that we had never really tried before. So on the show today, we're joined by first our contractor, Tony Zambito from Zamco. Listeners of the show, Tony's been on a couple times. So we got Tony here, and then we have a couple people from TechoBlock. I'll start with Tyler. Tyler's our rep for Western Canada. You're coming out of Calgary, I believe, right?
That's correct.
And you are a former contractor. So you were running your own design build company out west. And a few years ago, you joined the TechoBlock team. So we were very happy to have you on site and have your experience with us as we were trying to problem solve every day, as you do on a hardscape project. Next up, we have Peter Weschelowski, another former contractor. Peter, you're from the east side of the GTA. And like I said, former contractor, been with Techo for 7 years now. Yeah. Knows the products, knows the business, knows how to build stuff. A little bit of muscle on site never hurt. And then the man who was dubbed our director of logistics throughout the project, because he was out there directing traffic every day. Brandon Taunton, who's our regional sales manager for Ontario and Western Canada. Brandon, you've been with us for how many years now?
13 now. 13
years.
Yeah. Started in marketing and then transitioned into sales and out to director of logistics.
There you go. And prior to being at Techo, Brandon worked on the same crew that I did when I was a contractor. And that story that I was telling at one point, I think the call I had or the recording I did with Paver King, where we're talking about safety and learning how to handle a demolition saw properly. He's the guy I almost killed with the piece of saw blade flying off. So we go back a ways, and somehow he still wanted to come work on the job site with us. So here we are.
That's why I was out front directing traffic. I was just staying away from all that.
Perfect. So figured I'd start us off here with a softball question. You've all been involved with TechoBlock in some way, shape, or form for a long time. You've participated in the different events that we've put on. I'm curious why it was important for you to be involved on this. Was your second showcase project, Tony, but why was it important for you to be involved on this one?
Well, I mean, from our prior conversation, when we were talking about it and just bouncing ideas back and forth, what I really loved about it is that it was more than just TechoBlock Showcase project, like the last one we did. This was more a learning event, more so than the Showcase project, because it's based around Hardscaper.com, which is tailored to teaching whether experienced or non-experienced hardscapers how to build things properly, how to keep some kind of norm in the industry, and I was really excited to be a part of that.
And what was the biggest difference that you saw from the first project that we did, where everything was kind of pre-designed, predetermined, and then we rolled in and we built it, versus this time when you were involved from the very beginning, before we even decided that this was the showcase project?
Definitely makes it a lot funner, right? Gives you a bit more creative leeway. So I really like the fact that I could say that we're one of the first contractors to actually design a showcase project, because usually, the contractors, like the last one, we were able to run some ideas by the architects over at Techo, but it wasn't the same thing like this one was initially my design, which is really it feels really good to say that. And then obviously Techo had the architects of Techo did have their input on it, on certain pavers they wanted to use and all that. So I think that together it created a really awesome project in a very limited space. So yeah, I think that it's definitely more fulfilling than the last one, as awesome as the last one was. I had more of my own personal touch on this one, which I really, really enjoyed and appreciated.
Cool. And you've attended many years of our shows. Why are those important? Because you always bring a bunch of your crew as well. So what do the shows mean to you and your business?
Well, I mean, I have a strong philosophy of you don't know everything, right? And sometimes you might have heard the same thing. I mean, Showcase has been talking about permeable pavers for at least 10 years now,
Mm-hmm.
something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And me being one of them, I've come to every single year I've come to Showcase, and it's only in the last 3 years that I started really applying permeable sub base or a permeable base for my pavers. So, obviously, the more times you hear something, the more it instills. And I think every year, although you mentioned it, you always spoke a little bit more on it and taught a little bit more. So I think it's very important to attend it. Plus, I mean, I don't know about other areas or in Montreal, we obviously cannot. We have a very short season because our winter is long, and at a certain point, it feels good to get back into that hardscape groove, kind of like a wake up call before the season
Like a
starts.
kickoff, yeah.
And yeah, exactly. In March, right? It gets you back into that feeling, gets you excited about the season again. But aside from that, I mean, you get to run into other contractors that you haven't seen for a few months, obviously, and I've always really stuck to that. You just have to hear the right thing once or meet the right person once to trigger something, and there's so much of that available for you at Showcase that I wouldn't miss it.
Very cool. I like the fact that you admit that, like, you learn over time. You don't just come to one event and like, yeah, that's it. That's how we're running our business now. You get a little piece every year, and slowly but surely you add that to your business and you grow. Tyler, I know that that's a similar experience that you had because as a contractor, you were attending our events. Now being a techo and having the chance to build the job, why was that so important for you to participate in?
Yeah, I think just coming from a contractor background and then going to work for a manufacturer, you're always a little skeptical about, are you going to give up all your creative outlet? Are you never going to be able to lay a paver again? What does that role look like? Is it just a bunch of CRM and catch and ship from contractors, or are you actually going to get out there in the field and get your hands dirty from time to time, right? And how are you going to handle that transition? So for me, coming from a design build background, it was really cool to have seen the showcase projects in the past. Obviously, the design aesthetic of not only our products, but the actual projects themselves from a big picture standpoint are always pretty in depth, pretty detailed, pretty full out inclusive. And there's lots to be learned there, right? So part of what I enjoy about my job now on the manufacturer sales rep side of things is getting to go and work with different contractors all the time. I'm always going to a site and learning something new or having interesting conversations. Sometimes I may be helping them. Sometimes I may be learning something from a guy like Tony. And then applying that to help another contractor down the road. And I think for me, Showcase was just one of those things that was, when I made the transition to Techo, kind of on the to-do list, right, is just really be a part of that creativity and get to meet some guys outside of Western Canada.
Yeah, and I think that's what's cool. I mean, that's what Tackle Block's been doing for a long time through Showcase and now through Hardscaper and even through the Hardscape Growth podcast is getting hardscapers together to help each other. Hardscapers helping hardscapers, and we can grow the industry together because there's more than enough work for everyone. There's more than enough opportunity for everyone. And if we work together, we'll get more faster.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And I think it just really helps to elevate the game of the entire industry as a whole. And we know that the better the installation methods are, the more we're kind of pushing those limits. In this showcase, as an example, we installed some outdoor speakers and sound system. we're starting to see trends going that way, and it's just more and more revenue, more and more margin, more and more profit for these guys throughout the industry. And I think the more that is done and done well, it just opens up so many opportunities for continued growth and really profitability and longevity throughout hardscape.
Absolutely. Peter, what do you want to add to what Tyler just said there?
No, I think he nailed it. Coming from a contractor background, the excitement of being, part of such a, in-depth project like a showcase project. Maybe as a contractor, I wasn't always installing lighting, or like Tyler said, speakers, or there's some features that we've got on this project that weren't really always, something I was focusing on. But when you put a full ribbon around all the options that you have as a hardscaper, to install these different elements into a project, we're only getting better, right? I mean, maybe we're leaving some projects or some part of a project on the table. We weren't talking about lighting or speakers. Well, those add up, right? Those are little upsells that we can do throughout, the build or pre-organization, and have that conversation with the homeowners.
Yeah, and on this
being
project
able
we
to
have fire feature, we have raised garden beds, we have a pergola that we built, we have the lighting, we have the speakers. It's all built on top of a rainwater harvesting system. We have synthetic grass. We have a little bocce court and putting green. We have all these things packed into 1,000 square feet in the middle of the city. So it's pretty cool. When you look at your experience with it, Brandon, you were out front in the street a lot, handling all these deliveries of all these things that I just rattled off. Every hour a new shipment was coming to site. You've been involved with our shows for a long time, having been at Teco for so long. How was this one different, and why was it? What makes it? Well, not just why was it different or how was it different, but what does Showcase mean from your experience of over a decade involved with it?
Well, yeah. I mean, this one had a lot of interesting challenges, but if I just look at Showcase as a whole to start, part of the passion for me of why I like to do this is I always used to enjoy watching a site kind of transition from something flat or plain and build something super interesting, super cool. You guys already touched on it. There's all kinds of really awesome features in this one. And it was funny because I was out front kind of trying to get pallets off, reorganize pallets, talk to all your neighbors and the lovely people in their vehicles on the street who are always in great moods. I would come back and only see like a progression, right? So it would go from, okay, well, now it's excavated, it's on gravel. Then I'd come back and all of a sudden all the gator base is down. And it was really interesting to me to see, even in that tight spot, the potential, what you could do there. People look at their backyard, only have, 400, 500, 600 square feet. And I understand that this was larger than that, but there's a lot of potential regardless of the space you have. And it was just very intriguing for me. And it brought back that passion again of starting with a blank canvas. Me and you started by moving the shed around. That was in itself just a great time. And then, seeing where it ended, and seeing how that all just kind of got capped off, and now seeing the final shots of it. I mean, that whole process and just watching that timeline is, for me, that's the fun part. And that's why I wanted to be down and, be part of it. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you guys all touched on it. It's that evolution over time of the projects too. Like Peter said, you don't want to be, you don't want to be leaving stuff on the table, but to not leave stuff on the table, you need to know how to do it and how to make money doing it. And that's something that we've all been able to learn over the years, building these projects. It gives us that opportunity to try new things and have the resources of having so many experienced people on site. So you're not trying to figure out the problem on your own. You have a team to figure it out. And that's what I really love about what we do with Showcases. Then we take what that team was able to solve, and then we share it with thousands of contractors across North America so that they don't have to solve the problem on their own. And we can do this together.
Right. I think you bring up a good point there too, Alex, that like sometimes Showcase, we have guys with years of experience, like whether it be Tony or Sean from Premier, laying pavers and building decks, or RC Outdoor, all these guys out there that you've had on the podcast, and they go, yeah, man, like we get it. We know how to lay pavers, and we know how to lay slabs, and we know how to get a wall somewhat straight. But like they may come to Showcase and go, hey, I haven't put lighting. I see these guys doing all these Starry Night things in driveways and stuff. I don't know how to install those. I've never used a core drill. I don't even know like where to start on the tools. And like for me, Showcase too, like there are so many other little things that go into that add-on part of a project where you can gain that confidence at Showcase and then feel comfortable knowing that like, hey, if I sell this, we're going to be able to execute and like drive that higher revenue and meet our goals by the end of the year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because I remember when Ty was still a contractor, we were given the showcase out there and we were talking about open graded material. And I remember he was one of the first ones that came back and like we started talking about it, and you could see like he's like, so if I get this in, it essentially gives me a chance to prolong the season. And like that was one of the things that he started working more and more with when it was still not that popular. I mean, we had a lot of other contractors out there looking at us like we were like crazy. Like, it's not going to work. You can't do that. You know what I mean? But Ty was one of those guys that was like, hey, wait a second. And he followed up on it and started applying
As
it.
a matter of fact, the very first showcase that I was ever part of while I was working for Techo Block, and Brandon, you may remember this, we had at least 5 to 7 guys come up after showcase, and they know who they are, because they all came crawling back about 6 weeks later and said, what was that again? But we got hammered with rain in Calgary following that showcase. And at the end of the day showcase, they were like, you guys are crazy. It doesn't work like that here. It's Alberta. We have clay. The whole 9 yards. And literally 6 weeks later, those guys were like, hey, so what stone would you use for that kind of application in Alberta? So here I am off to the yard finding, like, what is it that meets that spec of 90% fractured face and yada, 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 and giving them the feedback. And now there's a lot of guys that utilize our products that only build on open graded stone out here. And I would attribute that fully to Showcase.
And I mean, not to keep harping on this, but literally the dealer added a SKU of aggregates that they carry to sell based on the demand from the contractors for that specific stone. So,
and I think that's key too, because Tony, you've been part of that transition. Like you've adapted a lot of the things that we've shown at our events, and then you take it to a whole other level with your creativity and your designs. But just the finding of different products and the way that you source things, like even on this project, there were things where like, I don't know where to find that. And you have a guy or you have a supplier or you have a store.
Italian, I always have a guy. I always have a guy.
But that's part of the challenge though, right? When you do things that are unconventional or different from what everyone else is doing in the market, sometimes you're left to your own devices to find your solutions.
All the time. Well, we had spoken about this on another recording, is that you have to be resourceful to be successful in this industry, right? And part of being resourceful is building relationships. That's a big thing too. And as you saw on this project, I was able to get, luckily, I was able to get contractors, specialty contractors on site within 24 hours, right? So
gas technician, electrician, even the fence post. Yeah, these were all.
Well, actually, I sent Peter an hour away to go pick up a wire spool because he found it.
I was just gonna say, when we had we made the change from putting the outlet box from, we originally had it under the deck, we moved it to the back shed. That changed things for us, and like within 2 hours of making that decision, we had it on site. And we were hooking it up in the shed. And that was because of Tony's network of guys. He was able to pick that phone up, make a call. Peter, it's available. Can you get it? And we were able to get that. It was a very minor hiccup for us.
We didn't feel it. Like we were able to, okay,
Tony
that's problem solved. Think of the next thing. Because at the end of the day, what we do every single day, yes, we build and it's awesome and it's beautiful and all that. But all we do all day, like I have a crew. My crew builds. I love building, but that's not my job anymore. My job is to solve problems. That is my job day in, day out, is to solve problems, because no matter how organized you are, no matter how prepared you think you are, there's always going to be a problem to solve.
Mm-hmm.
We work in an uncontrolled environment, right? We're not enclosed. We have rain, we have all kinds of, we're completely at the mercy of Mother Nature. So that in itself has its own obstacles. Then obviously there's materials. I've received, you go to get stone dust and it shows up, and there's because the quarry scooped a bit too low and they picked up some 0.75 and mixed it with your stone dust. It's a stupid problem. It's out of your control, but it's a problem. What do you do in that case? You have a whole crew waiting. What do you do? Okay, we have literally sifted the the stone dust in order to extract the 0.3. We've done that, but those are solutions on the fly. What's the fastest solution? So I think every project has its own unique obstacles, and the more obstacles you overcome, the quicker you find the solutions down the line. And that's why on this project that we were already dealing with space constraints, timing, all these things. At least these other little things we were able to solve immediately and on the go and on the fly. And I think that that's what kept it going, and it kept us really on a very, very productive schedule.
Yeah. And now everybody listening here or watching on YouTube or on hardscaper.com, we're not showing the design here because we will be showing it at our events, which you can register for on hardscaper.com. But let's talk about the design a little bit, because like you said, Tony, you were involved from the beginning. And there were some elements that you brought to the table that really transformed what was, 1,000 square feet of soggy grass that couldn't really grow very well. Not much going on in that backyard. Tight access. The yard is about 20 feet wide by 60 feet long. There's an existing deck. There's a mature tree. There's a really shady corner on a 45-degree angle. There's a storage shed. So, it's one side of it is just a giant concrete wall. Some people can look at that space and say, well, here's a ton of limitations, so we're going to keep it simple. But that's not the way you roll. So why don't you walk us through like what you saw when you came through the first time and how it came to the final design?
Well, I mean, I saw an awesome space, actually. Aside from, obviously, like I said, when I got there, yes, it was just that. It was soggy grass, a totally unusable corner, another unusable corner, and a space in the middle with stepping stones. That the only aesthetic thing in the yard were a couple stepping stones that just led to a gate to get yourself out of that yard.
Yeah.
that was it. Especially where you are, I mean, where the project was located, there's so many cool restaurants around. So it sucks to be limited to what you can enjoy at your own house when you live in such a beautiful neighborhood because of your space constraints. So right off the bat, I mean, it didn't work itself into the thing, but I saw that massive that massive concrete wall, and I was like, Kansas. You know what I mean? Like immediately. But that's like to my extreme thinking that didn't make the cut.
So right now it's just a big white wall, and just for everyone listening, Tony was proposing to do like a big mural across the whole thing. Ultimately, we did more of a living mural because we used all that in-light lighting to uplight a bunch of decorative grasses and plants and cast this big shadow on the wall, which looks pretty freaking awesome.
Worked out well.
It worked out well. But
well.
So there's that part. But even there, that was two options. We could have gone with a mural. We went with a light and shadow play instead to create the same effect in the end. Not exactly. Use that space. That's a vertical space. It's something to attract the eye. Let's use it.
Yeah, well, it's exactly that. And that was another obstacle though. Aside from using it to our advantage, how do we hide parts of it at the same time? Because that's an obstacle too. Okay, it's cool. We could benefit from it, but you don't want it to take all the attention of the whole yard, because it is. How tall is that wall? At least 25 feet high.
It's a good 15
Easy.
to it's got to be
at least 20 stories high.
Yeah.
So
Couple
20,
stories,
25,
yeah.
30 feet high, something like that. So it could really overpower the yard and make you feel
Closed in.
constricted. So it was a question of we had to do both. We had to utilize it and hide it, right? So utilize it where it made sense to us, and that was in that back corner where where we had put some plantation and stuff. That worked in our favor. But then after we had to hide it, so we used other forms of with our decor and all that. We were able to hide a portion of it and keep the focus on the yard itself. And I think it really benefited us in the end. But aside from that, it was a question of then you got to think of maintenance. We had to incorporate that synthetic grass because the way we created this layout, we had a very impractical portion of grass to maintain.
Yeah, it would have been a little small and awkwardly shaped. That would have taken as long to mow a couple hundred square feet as it would to mow a couple thousand square feet, just because how stepping stones cut in different shapes and all that fun stuff. And that was because of the way that you laid out the space, right? That garden mark artificial grass had its purpose because of the way that you laid out the three areas. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that was another thing. See, it's 1,000 square feet, which doesn't sound that small in the yard, right? You think, 1,000 square foot yard, well, we could do a lot with that. Okay. But, 20 feet wide and 1,000 square feet is a different story. When you're working in essentially a tunnel, I mean, you don't have all the open space. The width is what gives you a lot of versatility. And in here, we had to try to maximize that space. So I definitely wanted to tie it all together by having that zigzag, have three separate zones, because we had the conversation of what's important to you, how do you want to use it, how do you use it now, which wasn't
much.
The answer was we don't use it much. So okay, if you had the perfect yard, how would you have used it? Well, I'd want to have a tanning area here. I want to have that. Okay, cool. Let's make it happen. And that's where, with that wall as an obstacle, we had to elevate a tanning area. Because if you have a fence on one side, a wall on the other, we have to try to get those tanning chairs as high as possible so they actually get some kind of sun. Plus, we have that massive trees. So that was the solution there. And then drop down to the yard where you want the privacy now because you are in the city. But not to put it right in front of your initial step down. It's okay, well, let's step to the side, right? And that kind of makes it in its own cozy corner. And then after, you're stepping again to the side to go catch your lounge area.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to paint the picture for everyone. So imagine you're coming through a patio
Trying not
door.
to give away too much.
You're coming out a patio door onto a deck, existing wood deck that we refinished to make it fit with the whole look. Come down the stairs onto this elevated tanning area that Tony's describing. And then to your right, you come down some other stairs to this little dining area that we framed in with a beautiful pergola. We used like 6x6 BC fir posts and the Toya grid system to build this pergola to cover that area and just frame it in and create a little more intimate setting. And then further back over to the left again is a fire pit area with a bench. And all of that, custom built and custom designed for the space, but also designed to be as efficient to build as possible because we were trying to complete this whole thing in 5 days, which we did, in spite of all the filming and the rain and the delays in deliveries because of the global supply chain issue that the whole world is dealing with. So it's a testament to the planning that goes into the design as well. And that's a big part that you and I talked about on our very long lunch before we started the job, where we were looking at the design and then we were looking at what's the smartest way to build this project. And that's a large part of what we're going to be covering in the presentation this winter, in January, February, March across the United States and Canada, is what was the approach to get that done as quickly as possible. I wanted to ask Peter specifically, because we were using the Iconic wall, which is a fairly new product. It's a 2-piece system, so there's a structural unit and there's a fascia unit that goes on the front. And that product is one that could be perceived as having some limitations because there's just one length to it. It's just a consistent length. Every panel's the same length. But we built all kinds of features on there. So I was curious from your perspective, what was the experience working with that product to build all these different things?
Yeah, well, we had a couple of different ways that we built, right, Alex? The first thing that comes to mind is starting off with those stairs. You know, I gotta touch on that. And after trial and error, you know, pre-planning the night before, we decided that we weren't going to use our base blocks. We were going to use the structural blocks and the fascia units and run that way. And that pre-planning that we did brought us the success the next morning with building the staircase. So, I mean, for me, it's really time saving when we can make a turn with those fascia units because we've got the corner blocks on site. The way we saved even more time by using those fascia units with the corners which come left and right on a pallet, well, we took the 20 minutes ahead of time to put all the lefts on one pallet, all of the rights on one pallet. So when it came time to build, there wasn't any confusion. You know, we needed a left corner, we grabbed a left corner. So, you know, really, there's so many benefits with that fascia wall system. You know, being able to use a staircase, a water feature, a fire feature, a grill island, a retaining wall. I mean, for me, it was surprising how quickly it all actually went together and how tight the tolerances were. You know, I know that wet cast tolerance can be a little bit greater when it comes to compared to dry cast. But guys, I mean, you guys all know we didn't slow down for a moment when it came time to building those fascia units. They went on one after another. The different patterns that we have on those fascia units kept the consistency, broke up the line. So, I mean, I was very pleased to see the many options that are available to us when
Tony,
just
your guys
using
were
that wall
pretty,
system.
pretty
But
pleased
really,
with
it's
it, too, eh? That
more
was
than
the first
that.
time working with it.
Yeah, it was my first time aside from the initial MDF block trials that I played around with. It was my first time actually using the fascia wall system. Now I understood the concept, but actually building with it, at first it's like anything, you know, you get used to it. You know, you're trying to get used to the what unit is what, and kind of get the lingo down with your crew as well, so that they understand what you're asking for. But the second that happens, what I loved about it, I think that my favorite part of the fascia wall system, aside from the fact that you get these really cool finishes, because the iconic finishes, it's just awesome, is that your core construction is extremely fast and extremely forgiving. So
What do
as
you
you're
mean by
building the
forgiving?
core, of your system,
So
you
that's
have,
the structural
you know,
units, right? That's what you
yeah,
mean? Yeah.
you're not cutting to the core to the eighth of an inch or to you have that play in the you want to get to the end instead of cutting a piece this big or you're short by I don't know 2 inch or whatever it is. You could stagger a block. You have that margin in building them that definitely speeds you up. Granted, we didn't have to do that because everything was pre-calculated and all that, so everything did fall really well. But in the instance where, for whatever reason we got to a corner, we got to choose on the spot, okay, you know what, it's fast, let's just flip this block this way and start that way. You're not concerned about what it looks like. In installation, you chip a block, like who cares? It's a structural block.
Yeah, it's hidden.
You know
It's hidden behind the face. So what you're saying is that the fact that we could gap the blocks to adjust to the length of that wall section, the fact that if you drop it or you chip it or whatever, you don't see it. It means that the structural element of whatever you're building gets assembled extremely quickly, and then you're just popping the faces on, and then the next row locks on. So it does go quickly regardless of what we built. I mean, we built a raised patio, staircase, planter. We built a fire pit. We built a bench. And literally these things were completed in hours.
Yeah. And it wasn't a question of, okay, prepare this cut. Or we didn't have to pre-cut anything is, I think, what makes it the fastest way. Because, with all the other pre-calculated structures that we've worked with in the past, it's pre-calculated cuts.
Right.
So it's a different thing. This is different. You save that entire element. And the fact that we're building on Gator Base 2, I think, is a big plus. Although we did have to chip off that bottom node, that bottom
The lip, the alignment bar.
the lip,
Yep.
which was really easy. But then once we figured out that we actually have that play to hammer them or work them into the Gator Base, and then in the end, do you remember, Tyler, when we were trying to move them after doing that, and because you chisel it off and it's a bit jagged, it just locks
it was
itself
like
into
little
the Gator
teeth
Base.
dripping right in there. It worked
So-
really well, actually.
Which actually worked really well in our favor, because we were trying to figure out how do we anchor this stuff together, or how do we stop it from the potential of shifting. And we don't have to do that, because this anchored itself to our blocks with no edge, no anything. It did exactly what it had to do. But no, I loved working with it, and the second we got the hang of it, we were flying through those blocks.
Yeah, I think for all of us, it was way faster and easier to build with than any of us anticipated. We had all played around with it a little bit at shows and things like that, but to build a full project with that wall system, I mean, it really was. I'm curious from the
it was fast.
From the your crew's perspective, though, Tony. I'm curious when you're using new products like that. You know, it's easy for you as the one who designs the project, who sells the project, who's leading the team, to be like, this is what we're doing. But how do you get your whole team to be on board with working with the new product, having a good attitude about it, and not slowing down? Like, because they were flying right away with the product.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I guess I've conditioned them over time. They know that every project is unique, and whenever there's a new product, I try to be the first in line to get it out there and get that. So they're used to it, and it's almost become an excitement for them, because they're so used to doing different things. That, you know, every time we get, I pump it up too. Hey guys, this is a new product. We're gonna do this with it, and I don't know why, but I kind of sell it to them, like, guys, no, this product's amazing because of this, and they're like, all right, cool. They start building with it, and you know, they go out of their way to give feedback. I don't even have to ask them. They're like, oh, you know what, this product, this I like, this I don't like, and it's okay. Well, if you like that, then that's awesome. And if you don't like this part of it, what could we do while installing it to make it faster? Now they feel empowered. They feel like they have they're being.
Well, you're actually listening to them, like, for real.
Yeah, I'm listening.
You
Okay, cool.
are.
Look, I trust your opinion.
Yeah.
So what would you, if you don't like it, what don't you like about it? This. What can we do to solve that? Okay, the next time we use it, we're gonna try it like that. And they're like, all right, cool. And then we do it, and hey, it works. Or you know what, maybe it doesn't. Whatever the case is, my guys, for the most part, are very excited about new materials. So I'm lucky in that sense. But again, I don't really leave it to discussion. It's we we're using it. So either get on the train or
But I think
I don't know what to tell you.
But I guess
But they really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
They enjoyed it.
I think
a lot,
it's worth
actually.
mentioning, though, that Tony also supports them. So he doesn't just draw this thing up in AutoCAD or on real time or whatever he's utilizing for designs. He's actually there on site the first couple hours at least when these new products are being utilized, right? Like, there was some things going on while we were building this project, and Tony was getting some calls from his other guys that were on another crew, and he's very supportive. So it's not just like, here's a picture, here's some crazy product that I don't even really know how to use, but it looked awesome in the catalog. Good luck, see you later, right? I think that goes a long ways. Yeah,
And it better
it better look
perfect.
perfect. Even though I myself may not be able to do better, I think that goes a long way in just having your guys back and saying, look, I'm in this with you. Worst case, we'll call up our rep or someone from, you know, the manufacturer and say, hey, we're confused here, like, what's going on? There's a lot of good tools out there, whether it be a spec book or design guide or mosaics guide or whatever, all the different things that we have at Teco to help with that process, right? And Tony's like really in tune with those tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's two key things that came up here that I'm going to reference, and we'll add links in the show description. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, whatever, just click on the show description and we'll put these links in. One of them was, Tony, you were saying like how we pre-calculated all the dimensions of everything. So that's our contractor support manual. So there's a current version up right now. And if you don't want to use the link, you can also just Google TechoBlock and contractor support manual. Do that as your search and it'll be the first link. But that's the booklet that has all the fire features, all the benches, all the grill islands, all the wood-fired ovens, pizza ovens, whatever you want to call them, that we've built over the years, broken down step by step, layer by layer, drawings, list of materials, how long is it supposed to take, everything. And you can download that for free. So that's the contractor support manual. And everything we built on this project is going to be added to that for next year. And you can get that exclusively at our events. And the second thing is you were mentioning all the design software, Tyler. So whether it's real-time, whether it's AutoCAD, whether it's what do you use, Tony? Actually, use a different one.
I use Structure Studio.
Structure Studios. Whatever it is, if you go to the Designer's Toolbox, so either Google TechoBlock Designer's Toolbox or click the link in the show description, all the design files for every product we make, all the textures, all the patterns, everything is in there that you can download also for free. Bring it into your software. And that's why, Tony, your designs are I mean, they're killer because they look like the real thing because you're using those files.
Well, actually, that's why when I had designed this one, I actually showed it to you with the hatch patterns made by Techo. And it was, it really, I mean, aside from a couple changes that we had made after the fact, it really does resemble the exact finished project, which I don't think. I mean, in your case, you're in the industry, so you have that foresight of you see something and you can envision it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people can't do that, so these softwares are important. And having those patterns, a lot of times I get clients that ask me like, I was using generic patterns before Techo released the hash patterns for my program.
Yeah.
And the clients were so, even though I'm like, this is just a representation.
It's just, if it was like a 5-piece,
like that.
If it was just like a 5-piece modular pattern, that's the pattern that was showing on the plan. Even though you're proposing something that's like all blue grandes, let's say.
Exactly.
If the plans show that and they get fixated on that.
Yeah, I was able to show a detail band of ocean on one of my projects I had just posted. Actually, I had an ocean detail band around the pool. I was able to put it in, size it and everything, and basically scale it down to be the exact width of the detail band with the ocean texture and all that. And at first I was telling the client, like showing the pictures, like, no, I think it's too busy. I showed them in 3D and they were like, yes, 100%. Are you kidding me? Like, let's do it. So I think it's very important to use these tools.
Brad, go ahead, Peter.
Tony, you kept cuts to a very, very small minimum on the showcase job. Do you think that by using those hatch patterns that we have available on our website, you were able to calculate down to the exact piece we needed for certain areas?
Well, they were very limited.
Because I'll tell you, those cuts they were limited on that job site.
Less than a bucket of a skid steer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't much. It was maybe a wheelbarrow and a half worth of cuts for the whole project. It wasn't much. It's just pretty amazing.
Well, considering how hard it is to get materials, I think that's a big win.
We weren't wasting. You know what I mean? So, for sure. It really depends on the program you're using. To answer your question, Peter, my program that I use, I wouldn't say that it is the most fine-tuned and accurate as far as once you scale in 3D. But there are other programs that are extremely well. They're more CAD programs. I'd say the program that I use isn't really a CAD program. It's more of just a 3D visualization, but it allows me to be extremely creative and very quickly I could put something together. So I just use it to get my ideas out there to my clients more than anything. But there are programs where you could use those hatch patterns and scale them perfectly. And I would assume you could calculate your cuts perfect and you could see, if I start with a piece of sleek and I'm starting at the bottom of the driveway, I can work my way up. And then you could say, hey, but you know what? I have a little cut here. which happens all the time where you don't know till you get to the top and you're like, oh man, that's a 3-inch like sliver at the top. Like that sucks. Whereas if you could scale it in 3D or even in 2D, but if you could scale that and work it down and say, hey, you know what? In order to avoid that 3-inch cut, we could start here and have a 14-inch cut here and a 9-inch cut up there. Aesthetically, it'll be a lot nicer, which is exactly what the support manual is.
That's
technically,
it.
If you look at it,
it
shows boom, 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 that cut, that, which is how we built this project.
Yeah.
It was block, 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 block. That would have a cut, that would have a cut, and that would have a cut, and that's it.
It makes it so much easier when you're on the site and you're able to pull up the plans and show the guys and be like, okay, guys, we're building this thing now. There are going to be 3 cuts. So go get the saw. Because the saw didn't have to be out for most of the job because we had calculated everything to have as low cuts as possible. So there's going to be 3 cuts. Get the saw, get the extension cord, get the generator fired up. And these are the dimensions of the cuts. We're going to cut them when we get to that row, but we should be able to get started here without cutting anything. And that's what gets the momentum on the site. That's what keeps it going too, because we've all been there. Brandon and I have built plenty of trade show booths also where like you're trying to build something and then you're like, I don't know if we should cut this piece or cut that piece. And like everything just grinds to a halt and nothing's progressing anymore. And then all of a sudden guys start getting hungry and who wants to go have a smoke and who wants to go make themselves a coffee or whatever at the coffee machine. Your whole site just, you pulled the handbrake on it because of those little details that cause that hesitation. So when everything can be planned and communicated in advance, that's what keeps it moving.
The problem is a lot of contractors, and I'm guilty of this too sometimes. I have to force myself to do it. But a lot of contractors say like, no, you know what? I don't have time to sit there and calculate every cut on a job. But the thing is that, like I said, my job is to problem solve.
Yeah.
My job is to make sure that my whole crew could work nonstop, could just keep going forward. So technically, my job is to calculate those cuts because my time to do that is a lot more valuable in what I spend doing that than all the time I would lose and how much money I would lose in my guys literally standing there while I'm calculating these cuts on the spot. Because aside from cuts, it solves problems. You know what? While you're doing it, hey, wait a second. No, this doesn't actually work.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're solving it from the beginning. When the guys get there, they just keep building because the second something happens, like you said, everything comes to a halt. Everything just grinds, boom, stop, and then you're like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Every
They're all
minute
looking
that
at you.
passes.
Yeah, and they're just like, well, they want you to find a solution, but at the end of the day, they're getting paid. You know what I mean? The only one that's losing money is you as the contractor. So it's in the contractor's best interest to make sure that these things don't happen. And by doing that is definitely, if you could build stuff that's pre-planned, eyes closed, 100%.
All right. Let's end part 1 here at this point. So we've talked about the design a little bit. We've talked about pre-planning and the impact that has on site. We're going to take a break now. And for those of you listening, the next episode that'll be out next week is going to talk about some other parts of this project, mostly the challenges of building in the city, what that meant in terms of handling the logistics and handling the materials, and what equipment did we use that helped us stay on schedule and not kill ourselves all working together for 5 straight days. So that's what's going to be on our next episode. So if you're listening to these episodes later, well then check out the next episode in the playlist. We're taking a break right now. We're going to pick up this conversation in just a little bit.